Okay, Josh,
Hey, how's it going?
it's November.
Yes, it is.
I mean, this blows my mind, like how fast the year goes by.
It goes
It's
by
already
pretty fast.
November.
Yep.
Getting ready for Thanksgiving.
I know. It's coming around. It's right, just around the corner.
One of my favorite times of the year. I do not eat enough turkey.
You don't?
No, not like, I mean, I eat lunch meat turkey, but I need to, the problem is you got to really commit because a turkey's so large. That's not a casual dinner.
No. Yeah. It's like, hey, I'd like to take you out on a date tonight. Can we have a turkey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
7-course meal. I love turkeys. I love Thanksgiving and just family coming together. And so
Coming up.
yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. This year, you and I, before the camera was rolling, we were talking about some of the numbers.
Yeah.
The market numbers.
Yeah.
And you were saying actually they're pretty good this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Things aren't too bad. I mean, if you look at the numbers all the way around, I think we pended year to date 2,049. And if you go back a year ago, year to date, what year to date would have been like, if you were to take January through last month through the end of October, it would also have been 2,049. It's not very often you see them exactly the same.
Oh, it was the exact same number.
It was exactly the same number. Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah. Sales volume is very consistent. It helps us to anticipate and forecast and give a pretty good idea for what to expect in 2025.
And the big one was still for the vast majority of the year, mortgage rates were pretty high.
Yeah.
I think at the start of the year, I mean, we might even been close to 8% at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, the mortgage interest rates is the interesting story this whole year. So, I mean, we've had a peak of around 8% earlier this year. We were as low as 6.2% in the beginning of October. By the end of October, it was up over 7%, 7.2%. And, all the experts right now are forecasting that between now and the end of the year, we could expect our interest rates to begin to trend back down. And the Federal Reserve is kind of one of those things where, they're looking at, what the policy would be and what they would adjust to in order to forecast what inflation might look like. And, with interest rates starting to come down from the Federal Reserve's perspective, I mean, that gives you a pretty good idea what mortgage rates are going to do this year.
But it's so much more than that, like, because the Feds lowered the interest rate and the mortgages actually went up, right? I mean, it's like a multi-pronged thing. There's the bond market, there's this, there's that. Why are interest rates going up? They haven't changed anything.
Yeah.
And interest rates are going up.
Well, they kind of went up because investors, essentially, they were kind of waiting to get a feel for what the economy is going to do. And there's some decisions that had to be made, and I can't really talk about it on the podcast because otherwise we get flagged for it, right? So you got to be careful with it. But, there were some things that have to happen. And when those things, before they happen, they're sitting on the sideline with their money sitting there on the sideline because there's that big seven, big companies that have billions of dollars. And they buy a lot of, part of what they do with that money is they'll put it in the bond market. But right now, until they get a feel for where they should invest that money, it's sitting on the sideline right now, waiting for a little bit more clarity. And I think that you're going to start to see that money start to flow back into the bond market now. You'll start to see rates coming down. Like I said, the mortgage interest rates are likely, most experts predict, going to be lower by the end of the year.
Any forecasts as to how much lower?
Well, I mean, it's going to be likely back down to similar to what it was in the beginning of October, maybe around 6.2%. I think that's realistic. And perhaps if it really, really turns out to be a good thing, maybe it could be as low as 6% by the end of the year.
And then even within that, people can probably buy down and get into the fives, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, we still represent D.R. Horton on a lot of their home purchases and sales here locally. And, they're buying down their rates right now. We've seen rates as low as 4.5% on certain things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, you still have the option to go out and buy these things down.
That's 4.5. That's really, really good. I mean, historically, we were all kind of like, like spoiled children from that era where we were getting like the high twos, low threes. I mean, that's historically. When was that ever like that before? No,
I mean, for a really long period of time, we saw mortgage interest rates that were averaging in the low fours for years. I mean, I think, gosh, I'd have to really look at it closely, but I'm suspecting 5 to 7 years it was sitting in the low fours. Of course, everybody knows what happened during the pandemic. It dropped into the sub 2, so or sub 3s, 2.5%, 3%, and I don't think we're gonna probably see that again. Hopefully, we don't, because maybe that meant something really bad happened, right?
Yeah, and interest rates are obviously that big. When they go down, or that big tailwind, and we're already seeing with the Reading market, inventory is so low.
Yeah, it's inventory right now is sitting around 800 homes for sale.
That's pretty good, actually.
It's not bad. It's climbing, which is good because right now our absorption rate even climbed. I think we're in the low 4-month supply of homes for sale, which means that we're kind of transitioning into a more buyer-friendly environment. Is kind of where we're at now. But,
really?
Oh yeah, definitely. But mortgage rates, because in Shasta County, so many people use financing in order to purchase a home. Mm-hmm. Interest rates have a huge impact on the volume of homes that are sold and on the price points that are selling. Interest rates really do, they serve a major role or play a major role in what's happening in the local real estate market.
So if interest rates go down even a little bit, a half a point, I mean, if they go down a full point, that's huge. You're going to see inventory probably move faster, and prices definitely at the lower end of the market go up, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, if you go back to the basics of economics, you have supply and you have demand. So if the demand side, more buyers are able to afford homes because interest rates went down, and then if the supply side remained fairly constant, then yes, prices are going to push up. And I think in the short term, that's likely what would happen. In the longer term, once interest rates get under 5%, hopefully at some point in the next 24 months, I think you'll start to see inventory growing much faster. And then those folks that are sitting on mortgage interest rates that are in the mid 3s, 4s, they'll probably be more willing to relinquish those rates to move on to something else.
Which is the other side of that coin, which is inventory, I'm shocked to hear that there's 800 units.
Yeah.
Because inventory has been low inventory has been the big, thing for several years now.
Sure.
Builders, you mentioned D.R. Horton. Mm-hmm. I think there's one other builder that we know that's kind of doing, but I mean, the permits is still way under normal.
Yeah, historically right now it's still way low, and D.R. Horton is still doing a good amount of home building here locally, which is great. We really do need the inventory. I'm glad they're here. But we have a collection of small home builders outside of that as well that they're watching, closely, watching what the interest rates are doing. But right now, if you read some of the larger economic reports, they're just saying that most home builders nationally and certainly here locally too are just kind of finishing up existing projects and playing a little bit more of a conservative role through the rest of 2024 with the optimism that 2025 with lower rates, they can, start building a little bit more.
Yeah, I wonder if two things will hit at once where, if interest rates were to come down a little bit, and then that would free up people that are sitting on these low mortgages to maybe, okay, you know what, I can sell my house. I'll let go of the 3.2 because I can get a 4.8 or a 5 or something like that.
Sure.
That's going to bring inventory in at the same time if builders start building. But builders, I mean, even if they started today, it's 12 months minimum before they're going to have a product.
Yeah, I mean, for those lots that are, it's definitely, I think right now we're probably averaging, I think they would tell you about 9 months.
Oh, wow, that's fast.
Well, right now it is because labor's not completely tapped. You have resources available to you right now. You have some supplies that are available to you right now. You've got labor. You've got, the ability to get some things. I think the only bottleneck actually, and this isn't a knock when I say it, but it's probably just getting through the permitting process is probably the thing that would really slow somebody down the most right now.
Oh, okay. You and I were also talking, about the NAR settlement had come out. It was, the sky was falling. Everything was breaking loose, and you said, hey, let's just hold on. You've been in this game a while. You've kind of seen things happen. The big thing that came out, there's two big things that came out, but one of them was the whole buyer broker agreement, right? Like, okay, to show a house, we've got to have something in contract, something in writing, which I liked because I felt like it was bringing more transparency to the market.
Sure.
I feel like too many home buyers, especially first-time home buyers, really, they don't get educated on what's really happening.
Yep.
So I thought that was a good thing. We just didn't know how it was going to affect. What's like the effect we've seen of that?
With the buyer broker agreements,
yeah.
It's as I had predicted earlier, it really has turned into a nothing burger. There's some good things that have come out of the buyer broker agreement because now I think that, there's actually this formal discussion that's taken place between a buyer and a buying broker regarding, what the scope of services are, what the fees are that are involved, how an agent actually gets paid, and then talk about how long this relationship's going to last, right? And I think that's a good thing about them. All of our agents now are obviously required to sign buyer broker agreements, but prior to going out and showing homes, we use two different agreements. One's an agreement that makes it really easy on the consumers. There's really low obligation to that agreement, and that's for us to kind of first meet with a buyer and have the opportunity just to meet each other and get familiar with each other. I call it dating before you get serious, right? Mm-hmm. And then after that, it's a discussion about a formal buyer broker agreement. But they're a huge value when you think about it because, we list probably between 40 and 50 homes a month in our office. And our home sellers, when we list them, they usually are, getting a few repairs done. They're getting some home staging done. They might get a little spruce up on the house. And of course, then the photography and all the things that are necessary to bring it to market. And during that season, our clients that are under buyer broker agreements, we can actually share those homes with them because our sellers have signed a document giving us permission to share those listings before they go to the market. And so we're able to, share with our buyers that are under those buyer broker agreements. We're able to share that inventory with them, and it gives them an access to properties that otherwise they wouldn't see until, they were live on Zillow, for example.
So they have to have a buyer broker agreement to even have that conversation. Is that how it works?
Yes. I mean, we've always been even long before these rules changes with buyer broker agreements, we've always required that a buyer actually be working with our company before they'd be able to see our inventory, because we have to be able to demonstrate that person is an actual client. Mm-hmm. Not to get into the weeds on this, but there's actual rules in real estate where they say,
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope that there's rules in real estate.
But they won't let us share our listings with the general public if they're not on the multiple listing service.
Absolutely.
But they will allow us to share them with our existing clients that we have under a formalized agreement.
Got it.
And so that's why buyer broker agreements are extremely important if you want to see inventory that's not on the market yet.
I guess that's what I remember when I was in real estate, it was a long time ago, but it was like, hey, do you want to be a buyer's agent or a seller's agent? And it was, the question was about focus, mm-hmm. right? But the thing is when you're a buyer's agent only, you're not going to have all that access to inventory versus you guys have your buyer's agents and you have a really strong listing department.
Oh yeah.
So that's where the two come together, where you have people that are very buyer focused, but they have access to all these houses that are about to hit the market.
You're exactly right.
You're not going to get that with a really small.
No, you're not. I mean, I've been, talking with our agents about this a lot too, about, hey, you got to make sure that you're communicating with buyers and really helping them to understand the decision and the seriousness of the decision they're making about who they choose to work with as a buying agent. I basically focus on three things for them. I say, number one, ask the agent how much access do they have to inventory that's not on the market yet? Because that tells you, are they going to only show me what shows up on Zillow? I mean, because most buyers can find that on their own. They don't need the agent for that. Mm-hmm. And so, are they actually, participating in bringing a large amount of inventory to the market, because that gives them access to things that otherwise they may not have a chance to see. The second thing I always recommend is that make sure the agents are full-time. An agent, if you're in this profession full-time, 40 to 50 hours a week, you're coming into an office, you're networking with other agents, you're talking about really good properties that are already on the market and maybe great properties that are coming into the market in the future. And it's that collaboration that really helps buyers and sellers connect. And that's that ecosystem that I think a customer is really expecting. And it's not common though. I mean, you got to actually ask agents, are you full-time or are you doing this part-time? Because it could be the difference between getting a good home or not, right? And then the final one is just experience. We're talking to them about, hey, make sure they understand that experience shows up a lot when you're working with an agent. So if you want to get a really good home at a good price, being with an agent that knows what they're doing, they can negotiate a good price for you, right? And then the second side of that is that when you're in escrow on a property, if you have an agent with experience, when you get through those inspections and things like that, there's typically another negotiation. And a good experienced agent will assist a buyer in really maximizing the benefit of that negotiation. But if you're working with somebody that doesn't know how to do those two things, it could cost you some money.
Oh, absolutely. The real estate has always had this group of realtors that are part-time. I'm not digging them on or anything, but when you're part-time, you shouldn't be as good as somebody who's full-time. It's like the 10,000 hours thing. Somebody this is all they do. 40 plus hours a week, and they've been doing it for multiple years, especially in a large office like this, where, it's iron sharpens iron. This isn't just one or two people in here. I don't know how many people, you got over 20 people in here that have a wealth of experience in real estate. And so they're not islands. They get to turn to the agents around them. They get to turn to the broker and say, hey, I've got this question. How should I handle this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a collective intelligence, and that's really important. And I think that's why, when you hear people say stuff like, you'll hear derogatory remarks about realtors. I think it's because they've had an experience with somebody who just wasn't all so green. They didn't know how to negotiate. Yeah. They thought negotiation was being antagonistic with the other party. It's like, this is not law and order. Yeah. This is not court. Yeah. You are supposed to help facilitate the transaction here, where the truth is all parties should walk away feeling like it's win-win. That's completely doable. Not like, we know we've won because the other party will have lost. That's not.
Well, I'll give you a really short example. I don't know if I should even do it on a podcast, not for the problem that it could cause, but just the how long it might take to explain it.
Go for it.
Bottom line, I had a property. I'm going to substitute numbers so that way, if the person that's involved in this wouldn't know that it was related to them.
Names have been changed to protect the innocent? Is that what we're talking about? Okay, yes. Let's go.
So numbers have been changed, but property sold, contract price on it, $525,000. Okay. It appraises at $500,000. I'm representing the seller. When the appraiser tells me that it's going to appraise low, I try to provide comps. Hey, here, check it out. This is how we supported the value. Trying to assist them and being able to describe a value that he couldn't otherwise describe. Appraiser didn't agree with my findings. It looks like we're going to sell it for $500, right? I tell the seller, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, be prepared. You have a contract of $525. This property is now selling at $500. It's appraising at $500. And there's a highly likelihood that the buyer agent is going to talk with the buyer and they're going to make a request for you to drop your price to $500. Make sense?
Yeah.
Sellers say to me, okay, Josh, we understand. In other words, we're ready.
We're prepped.
Right? Yeah. So the agent on the other side sends a request via email requesting to drop the price from $525 to $500 on an addendum.
And followed up with a call, right?
No call, no text, nothing. And so when I received that, the first thing I thought was, well, I'll be waiting for my phone call, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm waiting for
That's kind of a big deal.
I'm waiting for the explanation.
Not like, hey, we want you to leave the microwave.
Right. Yeah.
We want you to take $25,000 off.
Exactly. So I'm waiting for the explanation, right? I'm waiting for, all the reasons why our seller should consider to drop the price. And I was prepared for that. And actually the seller was prepared for that. And that's actually what was going to happen. But because they never called and they never texted, my gut told me the buyers are going to buy it anyway. So they probably told their agent, shoot it over, make a request. If they don't say if they say no, we're going to buy it anyway. She never called. So as a result of that, I went back to the sellers and I said, it's interesting. They never called when they made the request. They just simply sent it over. And they go, okay, well, Josh, what do you think you should do? And I said, well, it's up to you, of course. But if you don't agree to this, I think they're still going to buy it because they never called to try to sell it. And so they said, okay, well, let's go back and do that, which is exactly what we did. We went back and said no. And the buyers, of course, bought it anyway. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, the whole thing was over. I'm thinking, gosh, that was a $25,000 error in judgment, all for one reason. They didn't make the call. And, if I loop this all the way back to the beginning, when you go to hire an agent, hire somebody that understands the psyche involved with selling real estate.
Yeah.
Because it could cost you thousands of dollars if you make that error in judgment.
It does every day.
What I mean? It's
every
like
day.
going to a doctor, and if you have a back problem, you're going to have a back surgery. Do you go to the doctor that's done it, a couple of times a year, or the person that's doing it a couple of times a day?
Yeah.
Because I suspect the one that's doing it a couple of times a day has a high level of proficiency, clearly because of the amount of business that person's doing on a regular basis, or in this case, operations. It clearly tells you that people are happy with the result. I think you should pay attention to it.
Yeah, the people that discount realtors, they haven't seen behind the curtain. They don't know, or they had a really bad experience because they did work with somebody who was just casually a realtor. And it's a completely different experience.
It is.
Yeah, no. What's funny about that is that reminds me of, there was a term that, well, I guess it's been around forever, but this year I think we saw it more than often, was subject to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it started to pop up. Anytime the market fluctuates, something happens. Like you see a bunch of and I saw one this month. And so for the people that don't know, what is subject to, can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So what's triggering this for Joey is that him and I were talking about this situation. We have, on a almost daily basis, we get offers that get submitted to our office by investors, quote unquote, and they're requesting that our seller agree to sell their property to them subject to. So let me explain to you what subject to is. Let's say I own a home and I own the house that's worth, $500,000. Let's say my mortgage on it is, $475, $490, $500, whatever. And I don't have a ton of equity in it. I can't really sell it. These people will come in and they'll say, hey, why don't you do this? Deed us the property. And you still have your mortgage on it, but deed us the property and then we'll pay your mortgage for you. And on the surface, that might sound good. But here's where the attorneys have always told me this is the risk that they've seen with this. And so it's not just my opinion. I mean, I'm talking about a lot of good attorneys locally here in town tell me this is the reason why they don't like it. If I deed you my property, I still am obligated for the loan. And if you decide not to pay the loan, that hurts my credit, right?
Yes.
And then my only course of action is to get you to either deed me the property back, which you may or may not agree to do, And I might have to go through a court action of foreclosing on you in order to get it back. But that also means that I had to resume the loan payments if I didn't want credit to get hurt. And I had to pay the legal fees that are associated with getting the property back. And all of that's going to be harmful. That's one thing. The next one is, if I do that, if I deed you the property and I still have the obligation of the mortgage, when I go to obtain credit for other things in the future, like a car or another house, a portion of this obligation is going to count against me.
Yes.
And I'm not really in a position where I can just get you to pay me back because I don't own the property anymore. And so what people don't understand with subject to is that you're essentially giving up your control over a property, but you're still liable for the obligation. And so we had a review guy personally recently jumped on Google and gave me a bad review because we educate our clients around the risks involved with this.
But he wanted to make money, Josh. He wanted to make money off your sellers, Josh.
Money. And I responded to his review and I basically said, buyers beware, sellers beware, homeowners beware, that this practice is happening on a regular basis. Yeah. And the reason why we're bringing it up on a podcast is because for the point earlier we brought up, not every agent understands these things.
Because these transactions are happening.
We're getting them almost every day. So I could only imagine they're sending them out to everybody in the marketplace right now. And these are not new, by the way. I've been doing this is my 25th year selling real estate here. I've seen these things for at least 25 years.
They go in waves though, don't they? They go dormant for a while and then all of a sudden
they become popular when you have a season in the market where equity positions could be similar to the actual values of the property. Okay. So when the market's appreciating through and everybody's selling whenever they want to, you don't hear about subject to. When the market starts to plateau, which we've been in for the last 12, 18 months, right? Yeah. When the market starts to plateau, all of a sudden subject to comes back in. I've seen this at least a half a dozen times in 25 years. This is not new. But what I want to make sure our clients understand is that it's a huge risk for you to participate in it. And I would recommend you talk to several attorneys about the risks involved before you choose to do something like that.
Yeah.
So, and that's essentially how I responded to this individual. Like, hey, thank you very much for the 1-star review, but I'm not changing the way we communicate with our clients because high risks need to be disclosed that way.
Yeah, you got a 1-star review because you stood up your fiduciary duty to your client and said, no,
you're just selling the property.
Yeah, instead of just, give this guy the keys. What could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not putting my name on something like that.
No, I
without the sellers actually being educated on it.
And the bottom line is it is their choice.
Yeah.
All you can do is lead the horse. You can't,
That's
I mean?
it.
So, but I'm sure, hopefully you're that's why I gave you the 1-star review is because the sellers were like, oh yeah, you're right. We don't want to do that.
No, they just want to sell horrible. The property and be free of the obligation.
Yeah. We don't need to carry somebody else's debt.
Agreed.
Like you and I are also talking, we have a few things. Number one, I want to talk about the rental market.
Yeah.
I know that the inventory coming up a little bit. You said we have 800 units. What has that done to the rental market? Are we seeing it similar? Is it similar effect or is it?
The property managers are telling me right now that we're still sitting at that vacancy rate of around 7% on long-term rental markets. So, and that's factoring in for them taking homes back into inventory, going through the remodeling or repairing process, and then reintroducing them back to the market. So, I mean, I would say vacancy is all-time low. I mean, it's super low. Maybe not all-time low, but super low. The average rent right now is still average for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, about 15 years old. Maybe the house is around 1,400 square feet. Average rent in Redding is still around $2,095 a month.
I find that crazy.
I know it's crazy. And for all intentional purposes, that market's tight. The vacation rental market didn't do as well, and we're probably back to a new stabilized market now, meaning that during the pandemic, huge amount of travel and migration shift patterns or migration pattern shifts. Mm-hmm. And as a result, you had vacation rentals that were staying really occupied at really good rates. And then we got, those dropped significantly, probably about 18 months ago is when they really, really got adjusted down. And now we're probably more in a more, leveled out, where people kind of understand where the value is now, what the rents are for vacation rentals. But it's still softer than the long-term rental market for sure.
So do you think with the rental market at 7%, I mean, the reality is maybe that's really like 2 or 3%, because like you said, at any given time, there's the houses that are getting turned over.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody moves out, it's pretty rare that you can get somebody back in. I mean, usually if nothing else, a deep cleaning, and then you have to advertise, and usually at least a month.
Oh yeah, no, and it depends if you're managing yourself or not. I mean, when my wife and I used to manage our own properties, we were terrible at that. We would take a property back into inventory. I'd have a really busy month selling real estate in my company and my business. I wouldn't have time to get on top of that rental and do what needed to be done. It would sit an extra month before I'd actually address it. Where now I have everything with property management and everything's managed more efficiently. So yeah, I think that 7% is factoring for probably some inefficiencies. And then of course, those that are getting repaired and remodeled.
And I'm just curious as to what, Bethel is building that school. And I think we're still a couple of years out, but if they're not building
dormitories,
if they're not building dorms, like man, that's going to have a huge impact on the local market. It'll have an impact on the rental market. It'll have an impact in investors purchasing homes for the rental market. I mean, I'm still bullish on the Reading real estate market.
Oh yeah.
I'm still very bullish, even though we have 800 units. I just think that's
still low.
Thing.
No,
yeah, it's super
I mean,
low.
a neutral market's 4 to 5 months supply, but it's supply relative to the demand, right? So sales volumes are likely to pick up when interest rates continue to drop. I think 2025 we're going to see more sales than we saw in 2024, which would have been more sales than in 2023. So I see a really optimistic view for the real estate market going forward.
Yeah, until I see builders like going crazy again.
Yeah,
I just don't see, even with interest rates coming down enough to entice people sitting on 4% interest rates. I think overall it's going to be, it's going to increase, especially anything under, I used to say anything under 300,000. I don't even know if that exists anymore. Anything under 400,000 for sure. Because what's the average price now in Reading? Is it over 400,000 now?
it's just under. Yeah,
it's just under like 390s. Yeah, that's the part that, when you look at the market and you say, well, the market went up 7%, and then you break it down into segments, those under 400, under 350, under 300, they're climbing much more. They're kind of like the big seven in the stock market, right? They're climbing up. It's the houses at 980 that went down to 960 because they shouldn't have been listed at 980 anyway.
Sure.
That's balancing them out. The higher end, I don't see it going up.
Yeah.
What about like commercial?
Well, commercial's still actually doing really good too. It's crazy. In almost every segment, I can speak probably more to commercial office space more than anything else, because that's what we typically deal with when we're selling it. But right now, I mean, my building, the one we're in right now, this would probably be $160 a foot right now.
Wow.
We just had one that actually right down the street. It was 7,800 square feet, built in 2007. It was a 2-story building. Marketed at $1.75 a foot. It was only on the market for 7-10 days, and it's pending now.
Wow.
And so it didn't take very long. I don't know what
nationally commercial office is declining.
Yeah, it's two different
animals.
fact patterns for sure. I mean, if you're in the Bay Area, Southern California, and these in the city center, a lot of disruption in employment, a lot of disruption in how work is getting done and fulfilled, and they're sitting on massive amounts of vacancy for sure.
But not here.
No, not here at all. No, I mean, I just negotiated. I can't disclose it, but I just negotiated another lease here recently, and it was a very good rent for what it is.
Oh, very good. So everything, all signs are green. The Reading market's doing well.
Yeah,
we actually have some decent inventory. Hopefully, interest rates will go down in the next few months. That's going to help buyers and help sellers, because
absolutely,
the more buyers you have that can afford, the more homes are going to get sold, and sellers are going to get what they want. Everything looks good. I would like to see more permits pulled.
Yes.
That would, I think, a healthy amount of inventory. But it was good seeing you. Thanks a lot, Josh.
Thank you, Joy.